All right, so we're back with another episode of Biz Mindz, and on this episode, we have Kristen Weardon, a life coach and relationship coach. Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Of course. So, Kristen, let's get right into it. How did you make your way to the Southwest Florida area?
I moved here when I was 10. So there was nothing here. Like everything you see now is 100% different than when I came here. Just as a small example, I always tell people Pine Ridge Road stopped at, what is that, out there in by the vineyards. Mm-hmm. And it was only a 2-lane road to there. Yeah. So just to give you an idea. And there was a train. The train ran through town. That's when I moved here.
Wow.
So you've seen it change just a ton.
I've seen 2 or 3 changes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
What are your thoughts on the changes?
I'm for responsible development. Growing up here, being in the business industry and real estate industry, my grandfather was a builder. My mom was a realtor. Been a realtor. I get it. And I understand that it's going to grow. But I think there's some mistakes they made along the way that they could have been a little bit more cohesive and not overpopulate certain center sections, because now you can't even get through the intersections. I mean, they just overdid it in some places. Mm-hmm.
And they're building like that. The AC Hotel just went up. I think they also have a plan for, I think it's Aquarius Hotel that may go up in that Pastrami Dan's Plaza.
Right.
I feel like going down 41 and all those little plazas that look a little older, that they're really low, like they're not high ceilings at all. It just looks like tiny little plazas.
Little 70s plazas.
I feel like all of that is going to get eventually just...
Well, think about it. They took away all of the hotels and a lot of beach area for people to stay in that was a little more affordable. I mean, you've got the Four Seasons and all these things coming down on the beach. And when you take away that, but people still want to come here, people are going to build a hotel that people can afford to come to, even if it is on 41, but it's still only 1.25 miles to the beach.
Right. Right. How did you get into life coaching?
Oh, well, that's an interesting story. So I've been in real estate since I was 19. So it's been a while. I'm not going to tell you how long. I'll let you do some research on that. So I really like dirt and I love watching things come out of the ground. But in 2008, I didn't want to learn foreclosures, honestly. And my kids were little and I said, I want to do something else. And I had the opportunity to be a spokesperson for the WIN Foundation. Well, the WIN Foundation teaches abuse recovery and empowerment classes for women. And I was like, oh, okay, sure, this is kind of cool. And I got to travel. I got to go to Europe. I got to do all kinds of things. I started off as national and international. And then they're like, why don't you learn the courses too? Because I took them. I took 2. And it kind of opened my eyes as to, oh, I didn't know when I was in my 20s that was an abusive relationship. I didn't know there was such a thing as financial abuse or religious abuse. I mentioned to you all earlier that I'd gone to a Baptist school. I grew up Catholic, and it was almost like a Pentecostal Baptist church. It was really, really strict. So I got to understand these things, and it opened my eyes. And then when I became a teacher, teaching people about what they've been through and how to recover from it, I mean, it just really hit home. Like I really, really enjoyed it. And watching a transformation over 20 weeks of somebody saying, oh my gosh, I didn't know my life could be better. That really impacted me. So I did that for 5 or 6 years. And then real estate's kind of like the mafia. You think you're out, it just pulls you right back in. So 2015 came around. I had people calling me wanting to finally sell or finally buy. And I got kind of sidetracked into that. Still doing the teaching and certain things on the side, still working for the foundation. And then I said, I'm getting to the point where I really want to just fulfill, myself. It's more than just about the money. Real estate's good money if you hustle. Anybody who thinks it's just you make money not doing anything needs to think again. I know so many people, I'm going to go into real estate and make money. I'm like, okay. But it just fulfills me more. So that's how I got into it. Just kind of a downturn in the economy.
Yeah.
Trying something different.
Do you think, so it gave you a different perspective in general?
It gave me a whole different perspective on relationships and people who go into relationships who aren't healed the stuff we bring into a relationship. I'm guilty of it. I watch other people come to me and they're like, oh, I didn't know I was doing that. I'm like, we don't know we're doing it unless we're taught. We just don't know. And then some people don't want to heal. They like being in this mentality of I hate to overuse it, the victim, but they want to always constantly push back. And those aren't the people I'm here to help.
Do you think it's because it's a habit that has been built up at that point? Like people who want to,
I think it's a habit. I also think for some people it's armor.
Okay.
They're afraid I'll give you an example, forgiveness. I always tell people, you have to forgive yourself and then you forgive other people. And, I don't want to forgive them for they cheated on me. Well, what good does it do to carry it around?
What about somebody that says, let's say there was a falling out with two people and somebody says, I'm okay where I'm at right now. I don't think about this person. I don't have any hatred to this person. I'm not upset with this person, but they don't want to make up with that person, or they don't see a reason why. Do you think that is a healthy way to move forward, or do you think that you always have to kind of, settle it or speak,
like be the bigger person?
Yeah,
and like closure.
What are your thoughts?
That's the word I was thinking of, closure. So closure comes in two forms. It comes in other forms, but the two biggest are, you can have closure directly with a person, or you can just have closure.
With yourself.
With yourself.
I agree.
For example, if somebody passes away or they're just not a safe person to get in contact with and say, I forgive you. As long as you've gone through the steps and if their name comes up, you're not saying, oh,
right.
If their name comes up and you're just neutral, that's okay. You've gotten your closure. You don't always have to go to the person. I mean, I'd like to see if you were at fault in something and you've gotten closure. If it's safe to do so, go ahead and say, hey, I'm so sorry for my part in that. But you don't always need to do that. It's more how you handle everything yourself now and going forward.
Got it. What are your thoughts on, do you think that from a young age, we are programmed?
So there's this thing called the Lefko method, and I took their classes for about 2 years. And everything their method is, everything that happens to us comes from our childhood before the age of 5. Now, I personally have a little variations on that. I think it's more maybe 7 because certain traumas can still happen and our brains aren't developed. And some people say as far as 10, and then everything that happens like in high school, you break up with somebody and you don't handle it well. Those are rooted in our past. But going forward, everything kind of feeds back there according to them. And I have to say, in my experience in working with people, I kind of agree with that. I just don't go with their 5 because I've talked to people between 5 and 7, something happened and it severely impacted them later on in life.
I agree with that because that happened to me.
So you're thinking of something right now that you're just
I think I was like 7. And my stepdad, which to me, he was my father, he left my mom for another woman. So that was very traumatizing. Yeah,
that'll impact future relationships. It impacts trust. It impacts how you deal with people. And how you deal with men, but also how you deal with women, because there's usually the blame game when you're a kid. As, oh, she did this, he did that. And then it's like, well, who do you trust? And it isn't until later when you get the full picture as an adult, usually you can go, oh, I get it. That's usually how it goes.
What age is the right age to start having conversations with kids that can not reprogram, but give them maybe a different perspective with the knowledge that you've gained throughout? And I'm saying you, but I mean anybody in general who's let's say in their 30s or 40s and has kids and has gone through years in life and experiences. What's the right age to start talking to your kids? Our
kids?
Yeah.
Well, okay. So when it comes to your kids, the way I like to look at it is there's always age appropriate. And I use this example because I've kind of been asked this question before. Because they're like, oh, I want to tell my kids like everything. Well, no, you can't, because kids can only handle so much.
Yeah.
When my daughter she used to love, there was this show, something about the ER, and it was like live. It really showed bloods and guts and I mean, I was like, and she was so into it. I'm like, I don't know, maybe she's going to be a nurse or a doctor. Who am I to say? And it wasn't giving her nightmares. I mean, as a parent, you have to watch these things. It wasn't giving her nightmares. It wasn't bothering her. It was more intriguing her. Mm-hmm. And this kid got shot. And I'm like, oh, dear Lord, how am I going to explain this to her without traumatizing her? And I don't want her to be afraid. I grew up around guns. My family are hunters, everybody's whatever you want to believe on that. And so I didn't want her to be traumatized by seeing this. And so I said, well, what do you think is going on? So I asked, you inquire as to what their knowledge base is, correct any fallacies, anything that's not true or they might have heard, or you can correct those. It's a great learning time when these things come up. And then she said, he got shot with a gun. And of course, this is probably right around a lot of school shootings happen. I think it's right after Columbine or right before, right around there. And she's like, well, guns are bad. And I said, okay, well, do you think somebody did it, if somebody did it on purpose, would you say that's bad? And she said, yeah. I said, what happens if it's an accident? And she was like, oh, I feel bad for them. And so we made it a conversation rather than all guns are bad or all people are bad. Because I didn't want to get into the, was it a robbery? Was it a this? What are the, she's too young for that. I think she was only like 5. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to get into those deep conversations, but context really matters when it comes to kids. Yeah. So I think when things pop up, you can take your life experiences and explain them to them. Even a divorce, like, oh, Sally's parents don't live together anymore. Okay, well, you should address it. Mm-hmm. Don't pick sides because you don't know Sally's parents' situation. But you can explain to them, sometimes parents separate. Oh, are you and Daddy going to say, well, not right now. I mean, life happens and things can happen in life, but we're happy. And, support your friend in her transition.
And I think that's the age that they start asking questions, 5-year-olds.
Yeah, I would say, age. Between 5
I feel like that's the age that they understand and comprehend more. Before that, they still are like little, but starting at 5, because we have 2 girls. One is 8 and one is 5. Okay. So my oldest at 5, that's when she started like asking questions. And now it's other questions that you don't know how to answer them. But yeah, my parents are divorced too. And my dad remarried. So my little one asked me.
I was about to say, she just asked this.
She just asked me that. She's like, so they were together and like, when did this one come?
Andrea?
Yeah.
Really? It's crazy how their minds work, no?
Yeah, but you also have to balance it a little bit in the sense of.
You have to be careful what you.
Like one question should not trigger a full explanation of something else, because I was trying to explain her, like we went out to a restaurant the other day and it's a nice place and everything, so I wanted to explain her a little bit about like the service and all that, and then I thought she was understanding what I was saying, and then like probably like 10 minutes after, she's like this, Daddy, I don't know what you're talking about. And it was funny.
But she's so like sincere. She's like, Daddy, I don't know what you're talking about.
She said it like that. It was so funny.
That's really funny. Well, since it is Biz Mindz and business has to do with money, what is a good age? And we're talking about kids. What's a good age to talk to your kids about money?
As soon as you can, really. I'm glad you're bringing this up, because I just had this conversation with a friend of mine who we were brought up that women don't really handle money. Mm-hmm. But yet my mom was a single mom, so she handled money. Probably not as well as she could have, because in her upbringing, brought a pretty standard Catholic, Italian, family. And so she was never really taught. And then there was also kind of like some, what I call secret money. Like you didn't want to tell Dad, so she learned that, so she passed it on. And I really think as soon as you can give them responsibilities, you can give them time to earn, you can show them how to save. Because what I see with some of the generation now, I call it the MTV/Kardashian, there's like a little bleed over into those too. That's not reality. You're going to have to learn how to budget. You're going to have to learn how to save. You're going to have to learn that sometimes, not everybody learns this, but sometimes you have to take the crappy job to wait for the better job. just so you don't get behind.
Yeah.
And I think any age is really good for that. Sometimes you have to take out the trash. You don't always get to load the dishwasher.
Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit, actually. I feel like Grant and his girls.
Yeah.
They, like, we've seen them, I feel like, develop on social media almost, right? From when they were really little and now they're getting bigger. But it's kind of crazy the amount that they know at such a young age, or at least the way it seems online. But I think it's just always interesting because when we were growing up, our parents didn't talk to us about money at all, ever. And I don't think anybody is at fault. I just think it's that if you've experienced a lot in life or you have more knowledge, I think that not the best thing, but something to do would be, hey, let me share this with the generation coming up so that they are better than I am. And I don't think it's the reason why they didn't share that information with us. I don't think it's because it wasn't the opposite. Like, I don't think they didn't want us to be better. I just think it was something that's like cultural, that you don't really talk about money, or you don't really have very open and honest conversation. Like, certain things you just don't talk about. What are your thoughts about, and I don't know if that's something that you can relate to growing up, but it seems like there's a big change in the way that older generations grew up versus how the newer generations are growing up. What are your overall thoughts about that? Do you see a lot of pros, a lot of cons?
Well, what you're talking about is, you're right, part of it is cultural. I kind of called it the need to know generation. When you needed to know, they'll talk to you about it. Mm-hmm. If you were going off to college, they were like, okay, well, this is how you pay a water bill. This is how you write a check. This is how you do this. When you got your first apartment, you usually had at least one parent coming in and doing things with you, showing you how to set up your apartment. And through that came this attrition of knowledge. I think we lost a little bit with two parents working, and sometimes you were doing some of this stuff on your own or with a buddy. And if the buddy didn't know, you didn't learn. And so I think we have a little bit of a gap there. But I also think when you look at Grant Cardone and his family, they're hyper involved. These conversations are happening in the background. So, for example, my grandfather was a builder. My mom was in real estate. So when I was 18, 19 years old, I probably knew more about certain things, but other kids my age didn't, because I would hear these conversations behind in the background. So they're just hyper exposed.
Got it.
So if you're not exposed and the parents aren't asking or answering questions and the kids aren't like, hey, Dad, how do you do this? Or hey, Mom, how do you do this? There's going to be that gap. But they were really the need to know generation. Mm-hmm. Whereas now, if you look back, okay, we had Tony Robbins. He was all about, learning about yourself and about empowerment and learning where you stand with yourself in life and growing. Well, that was one person. Now we have Grant and his whole 10X group, where then we have, okay, what is it about business? So we've had through these generations, and these people pop up and say, oh, this is where there's a gap. And there was definitely a gap. Mm-hmm. You go back to my mom was a 60s flower child. I always like to bring that up because she was like wild. I went to more concerts before 10 than I have since. Yeah, it was crazy time. But there were certain things, those generations didn't know, and they had to go out and learn, or that older generations didn't want to talk about.
That's very true, because I feel like my grandma is part of that older generation where I feel like she must never have spoke about those things, because my mom definitely never really talked about money to me growing up. And I feel like it's because like maybe money was an issue and it was not a good subject to talk about, type of thing. So that's what I think is also.
But do you see the message it left you?
Yeah.
That message right there, we didn't talk about it because it was probably a problem. But I know people who don't have a lot of money and talk about it so that the kids understand how it comes in, how it goes out, and what things cost, without leaving a message of it's a problem. We just don't have a lot of it. So we have to be careful.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting, the words, when you listen to people when they talk, you can hear the messages that they were left.
That's why I'm like very paying attention to like money, or sometimes like I definitely like appreciate when spending it. I feel like I guess a weird concept of money because of that.
Well, and we have to watch too, as we get older, money messages. I'm actually working with somebody right now. I'm in a mastermind, and we're in this segment. It's a year-long mastermind, and it's a business mastermind. And we're in a segment where she just talks about money. And I've done a lot of self-work, and there's a couple of times I've been like, well, I didn't know I thought that. I had no idea that the secret thing. My grandmother used to have a catering business, and so she'd always take that was her money, and she'd put it aside. My grandfather never knew how much it cost. He never had any idea. He literally, I think, died thinking jeans cost $20 still. Because she would just be like, all right, fine, I'll just put my money with it. But that didn't leave a really good message for me growing up in that household of how to handle, well, no, this is what it costs. Sorry, but this is it. This is what the groceries were this week.
Yeah.
So then you learn these things as even at my age, I'm learning certain things, that messages that I got.
And everything, I think that everything gets condensed into a general title, which I think it's poor mentality, right? In the sense, like it comes from way back, right? Generation after generation. Because if we were to play Monopoly, the first thing we're going to talk about is going to be money, right? So I feel like we're playing a game, and if we don't talk about the important things, then we're not going to play right. It's very common sense, but we just put like a lot of walls in front of things. So that's what I would think about that topic.
Yeah, I agree.
Don't you think it's interesting how long Monopoly has survived?
It's the best game ever.
We love
And
that
I think that's why, though, because it talks about money, and it's a way that you can learn or teach or be a part of and involved in without having the social constructs of talking about money. Like it removes the dirty word of talking about it.
And people, do you know what's funny that you say that? People say that, like, we asked a lot questions about money, but like we don't put money in front of family or friends. You know, we think that's not even, they don't even go in the same category, right? But like people don't want to talk about money sometimes, so they say it's not important. But you play Monopoly with people, and you'll see the real selves, and it's paper, and it's fake money. So I don't know. It's just interesting to me.
The way that people play Monopoly is the way that they I mean, how they handle money in real life, and how they handle
believe it or not,
business.
we see it a lot. Yeah.
I think it's how they handle it, how they feel about it, and also how competitive they can be.
Oh yeah.
Do you think money buys happiness?
I think money can help you have happiness because money solves problems. But I think if you give money too much power, it can control you and destroy you. Because I've been there with it, and I've had it, not have it, and now I'm like in this middle spot. And I can tell you, when we had, there was a lot. I mean, stuff I wasn't used to, things I had to learn. I didn't know what a trust was. I mean, all that stuff. And then looking back, I look at it as a learning experience. Because if I had to do it, if I did that again now, oh man, would it be different? Totally different. Because people just come out of the woodwork. Like people used to be like, oh, come sit at my table, come to my event. All of a sudden, I'm not spending $500 on tickets, thinking these people are my friends. No. They wanted me to buy stuff. They wanted me to spend money at their event. They were my friends. So those are the little things you learn when it comes to money, that you have to be really careful of, people borrowing money, all kinds of stuff. I mean, lessons I learned along the way, businesses people wanted me to invest in, sounded like a good idea and turned out not to be. It's a learning lesson, but looking at it now, money doesn't make you happy, but it takes away some of the problems that can make you unhappy.
That's a great explanation. I like her answer.
We've been asking several people what they think about that question.
Yeah,
they all had different perspectives.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, because I feel like you're programmed to say no. Like you always hear money doesn't buy everything, like TV shows, commercials, movies. I always grew up hearing money doesn't buy happiness. Money doesn't buy happiness. I've never heard it trending where it's like money buys happiness. Money buys happiness. I've always heard the opposite. So now we're asking that question a lot, and it's very interesting the responses that we're getting. Your response isn't a common one. The most common is like instinctively to say no. But then we go into talking about it a little more, and it's like, oh, well, yeah, I went on this experience and this trip, and I felt happy, and I feel like it just, I don't know, and I keep bringing up George. I keep thinking about it because I feel like if you are broke and don't have money, it's very difficult to be happy.
I agree with you because I've dealt with people from all walks of life and in a bunch of different countries, and I can definitely say that there are people somewhere in the middle and above who tend to have less stressors. Mm-hmm. And one thing as you're talking that comes to mind is when I was in China, and they had billboards everywhere in English, and it was like, don't want more than your neighbor, it's a sin, at doing, these kind of things. So I almost equate not wanting to be successful with like, what's the opposite?
Yeah.
You want me to be average? Okay, average isn't bad. We need average in the world. Okay. But you want me to be less than my potential? That doesn't make any sense to me. And if money comes with my potential, then why should what is that keeping me from getting to my potential? Because I think negatively, because of the messages I was given about money socially. And I think there is, I'm not speaking bad about the Kardashians. God bless for all their success and however it happened. And I'm happy for everyone who has a success in life. But if I need to be here and I'm not being there because society thinks money's bad, well, who are they to tell me how to live my life? Mm-hmm. And my potential, if my potential is to speak on stage to 5,000 people, and that comes with a ticket because it's expensive to do that, then do I help 5,000 people or do I only help 5? Mm-hmm. I'd rather help 5,000, and then the right-minded people will always give back. Mm-hmm. And that's where money also helps solve problems.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We like to think that that money maximizes who you are already. And it works in the way of, if you are a happy person and you're someone that it's always giving, once you have it, it's going to be maximized, right? But if you're the opposite, it's going to work the same way. Mm-hmm. Once you have it, you're going to become even worse than how you were before. So, but I think that when we ask that question, people automatically think that we're asking one or the other, when you can be happy and have money. So I don't know if it's something that, it's been told for many years, family, friends, and you name it. But I liked your answer. Normally we don't get that answer. We get the no, automatic. No, money doesn't buy happiness. My first response when I hear that is, okay, if you think money doesn't buy happiness, it's just because you never bought anything with money that brings you happiness. But you can. You just haven't done it. That's what I think.
I like that actually, because it does enhance who you are. Mm-hmm. So if you're kind of a jerk, you'll probably be a bigger jerk.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I agree with that. I've seen that.
I think the worst is when people say, when I have money, I'm going to. Because if it's like, no, if you don't feel like that right now without it, you're definitely not going to do it with it. Like I've had a friend that...
I was just thinking about this story. I was waiting for you to say it.
I had a friend that he would always say like, oh, when I have the job, I'm going to buy the car. And then when I have the car, I'm going to
buy the house.
No. I'm going to ask the girl out. and then everything happened. Like he got a great job, made really good money, got the car that he wanted, and
He didn't get the girl.
super depressed, going through a rough time, but that was coming from before any of this. There was, like, it was never working on, and I'm not judging or anything like that, but just my perspective was, and I told him, no, you should be happy, like, or work on it right now. Work on yourself before all of that stuff, because if you think that those material things are going to all of a sudden switch your way of being, then when you have them, it almost feels worse than when you didn't have them, because they don't fulfill. So I feel like like Gonzalo was saying, when you're happy before that stuff, it's just going to amplify how you feel. And if you're not feeling that happy prior to money, then again, it's going to amplify just with money.
What he did in that situation was he created an expectation of how his life would be in like a movie. Mm-hmm. He created this expectation, and when it didn't lead in obviously a multi-year expectation to get to this point B, expecting C, and when it doesn't happen and you've given it that much of an expectation, then the only opposite you're going to get is disappointment. Mm-hmm. And so when you get that big disappointment, because my life should be here now, well, first, stop shitting on yourself. And second, you created this own expectation of basically setting yourself up for disappointment because you didn't have a full plan of, if you find the right girl and you find the right partner, you can build with them. Mm-hmm. If you can find the person you can actually build with, that's what Grant and Elena did. They didn't have all of this. They just found the right person to build with. Then you can get the car, get the job, get the car, and already have the girl. Mm-hmm. So you have to be really careful with expectations we set up for ourselves. I think it's great to say, I'm going to save for the house, or I'm going to save for this, or I'm going to do that. But when we set up these expectations for our entire life, I had a girl in a pageant. She's like, if I don't win this pageant, I'm just going to die.
Oh my God.
That's what I said. This is before all my coaching, and I'm sitting in the back of the golf cart, and I'm like, honey, that's not good. She didn't win. She didn't even place in top 10.
Oh my God.
I was truly worried about her, because who says that? I mean, that's just a lot of self-pressure.
Yeah.
Now, she kind of ebbed and flowed the few days after, and she was fine, but she created a huge expectation for herself and a monumental disappointment possibilities. I mean, that's almost like, I need help.
Yeah. What do you think about, and this is kind of I feel like a touchy subject a little bit. What do you think about the new dynamic of, because you mentioned it earlier, like now both parents have to go work for the majority?
I'd say, yeah.
Right? What do you think about that dynamic versus the old school dynamic of, like, the man goes and works and provides, and what do you think about that difference?
So it's a touchy subject, because economically where we are now versus even just 5 or 7 years ago, I can't see people not being able to survive right now with inflation and things going on. Without both parties participating somehow, whether that's at home or out of home. Yeah. But going back, I grew up, as like I said, my mom was a single parent. So I didn't have a dad, but we always had enough. We always had a roof over our head. We always had what we needed. So I kind of come from a little different mindset. Does it help when someone's at home when they come home from school, being a kid that didn't have that? I think it does, because I didn't almost burn down the house. Wouldn't have probably cut my ankle with an axe. I mean, there's some things that happen.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right? There's some, we need to chop wood. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this as an after school chore. So there's things that can happen that it helps to have that person at home. Mm-hmm. But I also think, I look back, like the traditional, like you said, male, female, male goes out, woman stays home. I know some really great stay-at-home dads because the mom was making the money.
Oh man, that
And
was
they
exactly
can-
what I was going to ask you was, what do you think about stay-at-home dads?
They can braid hair like I have never seen before. I'm having a conversation with them and they are French braiding their daughter's hair. And I was blown away. I mean, I've had some great stay-at-home dad friends who, after the kids went to school or while they were starting school, they started like this little side business. And one of my friends now has this huge business that he started because he was a stay-at-home dad. And now she doesn't work.
What do you think about that?
That's pretty cool, actually.
Me?
Yeah.
I think that it's very an individual thing. Because if I tell you what I think about it, I'm probably going to tell you what my normal would be, which is I would never do that, But but I guess it comes back to how everybody wants to.
I think it's conducive to the situation.
Yeah, I think it's an individual thing, Some people can stay at home, some people can't. I personally see myself going out to hunt, at all times. But there's nothing bad if someone wants to stay at home and, because that's another job, staying at home. So it's just a matter of just choosing what you want to do or how you want to. I think just to summarize things, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like the way I see life is not always the way I say that I see it. I just see it very practical in the sense of we're not going to be here in the next 60 years probably. So I feel like we put titles to a lot of things, or we put barriers to things that are very just common sense and simple. If that's what you want to do it. If without just trying to shred every single thing, and just get lost on many different topics. I feel like if someone wants to do something and they feel good about it, they should do it. Period. And because then we can always be here and say if that's good, because it might be good, it might not sound good or attractive for me, but maybe that person is super happy about what they're doing and having a blast, braiding hair, and I have 2 girls and I literally shower them and I do their hair and all that stuff. But it might be something, weird for other people, So it comes down to what you choose to do.
I agree. It is an individual thing that whatever works for that dynamic. See, for where I come from, again, going back, 60s Flower Child, what came with that? The feminist movement. Mm-hmm. And the feminist movement was, I'm women, hear me roar and all that good stuff. So I grew up with that. And then I have my Catholic Italian parents at home, grandparents at home, and I'm like, where do I go? What do I do? I was very torn both ways. Do you stay at home and raise your kids? Do you go to work? I've worked since I was 13. I don't know what you guys expect from me. So it does. It comes down to what works for individual people. But I also think when you pick a partner, those are conversations people don't have. Mm-hmm. And it creates a lot of problems in relationships later on because either they're afraid to be alone and lose that person because it doesn't fit them. Yeah. And these are conversations in relationships when you get together, conversations about money, conversations about what does your future look like when you have kids? What is your expectations for household, everything? We need to talk about those because before it all did fall on the woman because she stayed at home traditionally. And then when she started to work, it all fell on her still. Mm-hmm. And now we've got more young men, and I know my son, he's always, how can I help you, Mom? What can I do for your mom? That'll translate into his next relationship, whoever he ends up with. But it wasn't always that way. So we are getting there. But these are definitely conversations that all need to be had in a relationship.
Yeah.
I think it's changing a lot too. Because back in the day, I think it was very, how do you say it? When the man is very, how do you say that?
I don't know in English.
I think in English. I think in English it's but I don't know if it's the same word. So maybe I'll.
Is that like masculine or something?
Masculine, right?
Like feminine.
Women are feminist and men are
Masculine, yeah. Or men tend to be more alpha.
Yeah.
Is another
Are
one
you trying to
people
say
use.
misogynistic or whatever?
yeah.
I don't even know if that's what you're saying. I don't know if that's what means what you're trying to say, but
What does it mean?
Well, I think traditionally men are more alpha. So as I've gotten more into the coaching and more into maybe even the spiritual stuff of feminist type personalities and masculine type personalities, you can have women that have a lot of masculine tendencies or alpha type personalities, and you can have men that are more feminine personalities where they're just, more soft-spoken or they're not hunter or gatherer types. And I think we have to recognize that as far as the persons and what they bring as alpha, female, not kind of thing, versus who they are exteriorly. I know there's a big push right now that men need to be more masculine and more this or more that. I think people need to be who they are, without getting into the whole political stuff that's going on. Because I see the look on your face, you're like, where is she going with this?
it's just always so tricky, right? Like those lines. Like I don't have a problem with any whatever people opinion is. I respect it 100%, but I do believe in a little bit more of the old school way. To be honest,
no, and that's it.
I think not to be disrespectful in any way, but I sometimes when I hear stay-at-home dad, to me, just instinct because of how I grew up. My dad's 80, so I'm 26. I grew up with an old school dad, and to me, it just sounds strange. To be 100% honest, just sounds a little weird to me.
Especially if you grew up with that.
Yeah.
That was your normal.
Yeah, not in a bad way.
If your normal would have been your dad staying at home, then maybe that would have carried to you.
Yeah, maybe my perspective would be so different. Mm-hmm. But
and if you would see the two guys that I'm thinking about right now that were stay-at-homes for about 6 years, you would be afraid to meet them anywhere. They were just these giant bear types. Yeah. I mean, you've probably seen them in the gym and you're like, hey, what's up?
Well, Eric is stay-at-home dad.
No, that's not. No, stay-at-home means the woman goes out to the workplace and the man stays in his.
How would that be? They both work from home.
They're working from home.
See, now there's the dynamic how it's
different.
Changing.
Yeah.
It is changing.
But they divide their time. So, let's say Eric takes one or both to school, Pia picks them both up. That type of thing. It's half and half. They divide how they take care of them very evenly, pretty much.
So that's the new dynamic that COVID gave us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the dynamic of what are you doing? What am I doing? But then we have to be careful with this stay at home and both of us working from home and staying home. Because when do we have time for us? When do the kids get a break from us?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
When do they get to play? I mean, you really have to have really good boundaries with yourself, your spouse, and your kids when you're all working from home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And super high level of communication, I feel, at that point. And another thing with the kind of staying on this topic just for a little bit, I feel like there also is a fine line of everything being okay today is also a very tricky line as well. I know it's touchy and stuff like that, but still, I do think that
everything's normal now.
Yeah, everything's okay. And at a certain age, I feel a kid is a kid. Sometimes,
it's not okay.
It's not okay.
Parents still need to, in my world, parents still need to be parents, because if these kids don't have boundaries and everything is okay, they're going to end up in therapy. They're going to end up in coaching. They're going to end up in bad relationships. There's so much I see unfolding in the world right now that it's not even a political thing for me. It's more like a mental health thing. Mm-hmm. Where is that person going to be, and what employer is going to take that and deal with that? Mm-hmm. And so if you can't have boundaries in some aspect of your life, we used to have this saying as parents, parents, you can't be your kids' friends. You have to be their parents.
Yeah.
So they understand the boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not. And if you don't, and kids with no boundaries or no rules, oh, honey, just go do, they're either going to do crazy stuff and always be in trouble, or they're going to what we call kind of a self-harm, is they set such strict standards for themselves because nobody else is, that it gets insane. They end up with ulcers. So there's both ends. There's no middle without that. So in my world, everything is not okay.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Our dad says that. Our dad says that.
Yeah, all the time.
You can't be your kid's friend.
Yeah. Because you have to grow up. I said this a couple of times to my parents, and the conversation was funny. But I truly believe that this is gonna sound either very like bad or very smart, and I think that we're born. I think that we're born stupid, you know, and we as we keep growing up, we start maturing, and we start becoming better at everything that we do. But if you think about what kids do, you tolerate it only because of their age, right?
Eat and paste.
Yes, because the things that they do, like interrupt, scream when they want, like all the things that kids do that are normal because their brain is not where it needs to be yet. If you put a 30-year-old into the kid's actions, what will you say?
I think a majority of us would say, what the heck?
Right.
Whereas there's a society out there now that is like, oh, but that's okay. Let them be who they are.
Yeah, no, that's ridiculous.
Let them
I
express
think there's more
themselves.
people like this than we hear about.
Yeah,
Because we are not in control of that majority. The minority
I agree with
is
that a
out there having a conversation
I agree.
and not including our perspective. Because again, I'm really curious to see what the 20-somethings turn out to be like in 20 years. Are they going to be not able to get a job? So they're the ones that really want this government employment and help and assistance. And is there huge mental health problems? I'm just kind of curious, but I hope it's not that. I mean, people like me will make a boatload of money.
Yeah, because this is all new. Right? This is all a new way of thinking.
This people thought the 60s was bad. People thought the 70s were bad. The 80s, who knows? They were all just bouncing around in glitter. I mean, I was one of them. I get it. And then the 90s came, and here we are in the mid 2000s here, early 2000s, I guess you could say. And it's, where are we going? I just look at these young people now, and I really get concerned. And then I was talk to sometimes 30 and 40-year-olds, and I'm like, what are you saying? Where did that idea come from? But people are also morphing backwards, because one thing I've learned too is it's easier to play down. So if this whole part of society is acting less than, I don't have to achieve. So it's easier to play down. It's always, you can hit the bottom of the person next to you, but the expectation to succeed would have to be over them to achieve more than them. Why would you? So as we used to say, dumbing down and things like that. So the more that you kind of bring a part of society here, well, why would any of these people who've already been here work harder? Unless they want to be in charge of something, then maybe they will. But sometimes you have a bad year and you're just like, oh, I don't want to try that hard. Well, I'm going to go over here and hang out with these people who aren't going to try that hard. And now you've just added more to that. So it's one of those dynamics that I think about quite a bit lately, actually.
Right. All right. So, Kristen, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to ask you some rapid fire questions. These are random questions.
Oh, no.
Random, fun
I thought
questions.
you already had the rapid fires.
Shay, you want to ask these?
No, I'm good.
You want to ask? Yeah. All right. Joey will ask.
All right. Here we go.
Okay.
Excited.
What digital or software tools do you use daily to make your life easier?
Canva.
Me too.
Canva and Jasper. They are my buddy.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
If you can only eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Spinach salad with chicken.
Interesting. Do you prefer winter or summer?
Summer.
What is your favorite holiday?
My birthday.
Do you prefer to relax at the beach or the pool?
Pool.
Fifth Avenue or Mercado?
Neither.
That was a first.
Yeah.
I like them both, but if I had a choice, I'd just stay home.
Yeah. If you can only work 2 hours a week, what would you do in those 2 hours?
Create.
A book you'd recommend to read?
There's a new book called You. I can't remember the author right now.
Isn't there like a series on Netflix called You?
There is, but it's different.
It's not the same one? Because it's like psychological. It's
this one's more.
It's good though.
It's more about learning about you.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
If you can have lunch with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
I'm going to go back to that last one. How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think everyone should read, for sure. And then what was this one?
If you can have lunch with anyone or dead or alive, who would it be?
My grandmother, who's no longer here.
Yeah. What's your restaurant in Naples?
Favorite.
Favorite
What's your
restaurant? Molto on Fifth. Italian.
I haven't heard of that.
We have to try it.
When
Got
you
to see
think of,
Francesca. She's the owner. Her and her brother.
when you think of the word successful, who comes to mind?
A bunch of entrepreneurs I know who created from nothing or created and lost it and created again. Just a bunch of people come to mind all of a sudden.
If you can choose any other career path, what would it be?
Lawyer.
What's been your best investment?
In myself.
What's a bad piece of advice you've heard people telling others?
There's a couple. Well, going back to the money doesn't buy you happiness, that money is the root of all things, root of all evil, but that's not what it says in the Bible. So people misquote it all the time. I think it does a little more harm than good. I think misquoting the Bible does more harm than good.
Love it. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was great. Great meeting
you.
all of you.
Thank you.